Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Brittany Unfiltered. Thank you so much for being with me today on this awesome Tuesday. Really appreciate it. And we've got a lot to talk about today. Before I get into that, just wanted to remind everybody that as of a couple of weeks ago, we are officially on iTunes, which I'm really excited about. I see some of you guys have actually been downloading the episodes, which is really cool. It means that if you don't get a chance to see this when it premieres on Facebook and YouTube at 9 on Tuesdays, 9 at night, not 9 a.m., 9 at night, that you guys can actually go to iTunes, download it, listen to it whenever is convenient for y'all. So if you go to iTunes, just type in Brittany Unfiltered. Don't think there's another one by its name out there. And it should pull up the podcast. So just download it. That would be awesome. Make sure that y'all are sending me your feedback because we've been out this, I think this is episode 10 now, which is kind of crazy. I feel like I just started it like yesterday. But we've already reached 10 episodes and don't have any plans on stopping anytime soon. So would really appreciate y'all's feedback. Tell me how you like the show, some things that you want to talk about, that kind of stuff, so that we can continue to improve this and make sure that it's something that you guys want to listen to that's beneficial for everybody. And just also a heads up, I may or may not be back next week. We're kind of getting into this touch and go area where I'm just sort of taking things week by week and seeing how I feel, because obviously we don't know when little dude is going to make his arrival. And so hopefully it won't be for another month or so. But of course, once you get to the end here, things kind of get, you have to take them day by day. I have reached the really fun part of pregnancy that I have discovered. It's what I have kind of dubbed the I'm so uncoordinated, I just dumped my glass of milk down my front stage of pregnancy, which is something I totally did yesterday. I was standing in my kitchen and honestly it was just a glass of milk. I actually ate a cookie, just like the little book says with the mouse. I ate a cookie and I wanted a glass of milk, and next thing you know, I just completely missed my mouth and all of this milk just ended up going straight down my shirt. And we're gonna pretend like that's never happened before. But it does seem to be happening an awful lot more lately, where I just feel completely uncoordinated and discombobulated and my memory is shot. So it makes shows like this a lot more fun because I have to make sure I'm staying on my train of thought. So if you guys bear with me for today, we actually have some really interesting stuff to talk about. There is a recurring theme throughout everything that I want to talk about today. At least it makes sense in my head. So we're going to go with that. And I wanted to start, we're not going to spend all of our time today on this because I know that it is a subject that has been exhausted a lot over the past couple of weeks. I've already talked about it. We're going to talk about it more in the future. It's not going to go away. But I really wanted to touch a little bit more on this abortion issue because it is something that, and I know Twitter is not real life and a lot of you guys aren't even on it, which frankly is wisdom on your part. But this is something that's been really heavy in the news lately. It's something that a lot of people have gone back and forth on. I've actually seen people on my own Facebook page, like people I've known since middle school and high school, are defriending one another now because they disagree on this issue so much. So it's clearly something that has stayed in the news cycle. And there's been more that has come out about this and more laws that have passed and more debates that have been had since the last time we talked. So I wanted to touch on just a couple of things before we segue into our next topic, which again, I really think is related because I think that there's a strategy that many on the political left kind of employ when it comes to topics like this. And a lot of it is based on misinformation. All right. And we're not even talking about opinions here. We're not talking about, what you think versus what somebody else thinks. We're talking about actual blatant factual misinformation that isn't really debatable no matter which side of the fence you're on some of these issues. And that's kind of what I wanted to get to the root of today, starting with the abortion topic. For example, over the last week or so, one of the things that has really bothered me the most when it comes to how people talk about these new state laws that are being passed, particularly in some southern states, in Republican-led states that are trying to offer more protections to the unborn and roll back or really put more restrictions, I should say, roll back abortion by placing more restrictions on abortion. and a lot of the very blatant misinformation that's being spread about these laws, which is interesting because I did not see that happening with more Democrat-led states that were pushing for even greater access to abortion. For example, in New York, one of the biggest things was that it essentially their new law allows for abortion pretty much for any reason up through the ninth month of pregnancy. And of course, a lot of people pushed back on that and said, no, it doesn't. But if you actually read the law, there's such a vague description of when these abortions are allowed that it's kind of this umbrella term. Whenever it jeopardizes the emotional or physical well-being of the mother, that pretty much means anything, right? Because you can label pretty much anything under the emotional well-being of the mother. If she does not want this pregnancy anymore, if she does not want this baby anymore, then it could damage her emotional well-being, and she should be allowed to get an abortion, is what these laws are saying. Meanwhile, you've got states like Georgia that are passing even greater restrictions on abortion with their heartbeat bill. And you had the other one in Alabama, which went even further and wants to ban abortion pretty much outright, except in cases of life of the mother. And there are some myths that are going around that are just completely false, that have nothing to do with whether or not you like these laws, whether you think they're too extreme, whether you're as pro-choice as the day is long. There are simply things about them that are being pushed that are false. For example, seen a lot of talk about how Georgia's law would criminalize miscarriages and jail women for having out-of-state abortions. Neither one of those is true. It's actually a very short law. All you have to do is go look it up. It's very, very easy to find. These are not things you have to dig for. All you have to do is go look up Georgia's heartbeat law to find that it does not criminalize miscarriages. And you've got a lot of really prominent people on the left who are pushing this myth. Okay, but there is a very specific linguistic difference with the Georgia law. It specifically classifies an abortion as an elective voluntary procedure versus what's called a spontaneous abortion, which is the medical term for a miscarriage. It's through no fault of the woman. It's something that happens. It's tragic. It's horrible. But there have been many on the pro-abortion side of the fence who are trying to conflate these two things and make it sound like Georgia is criminalizing women for something that happens to them, something tragic, something that they couldn't control. Nothing could be farther from the truth. And again, all you have to do is look up this bill. You don't have to take my word for it. Just look up the bill and read it for yourself. They're counting on you to not do that, okay? And that's not particularly with this bill. That's kind of in general. We've got a government that is so colossally huge now, and a lot of times laws are hundreds, if not thousands of pages long, and they're counting on you to not read them, and then you end up getting fed a whole bunch of nonsense by the media that is supposed to go through and translate this for you and ends up spreading a whole bunch of bull. Alabama's law is no different. What we saw a whole lot this past week, and again, prominent people on the left, this isn't just your Joe Schmo out there with, with 4 Twitter followers who's just like making nonsense up because he's got nothing better to do with his time. These are actual prominent pro-abortion advocates. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who's, you may love to hate her, but she's got a bajillion followers on Twitter who actually listen to what she says and take it as the gospel truth. So when she puts out there that Alabama's law would jail women for having abortions, she's lying. It is a lie. It is an absolute, complete and total lie. Now, whether or not she had read the bill before she spread that nonsense, I have no idea. But as an elected official, she really ought to. So I'm going to assume that she did her due diligence and she didn't just talk out of, her butt, and she actually read the law, in which case she would be blatantly lying about Alabama's law. The law itself, if you look it up, the law itself actually states, and I'm going to read it here because I want to be very, very clear. This is not me paraphrasing. This isn't me saying what I think the law says. I'm going to read it verbatim. Section 5 of the Alabama bill. No woman upon whom an abortion is performed or attempted to be performed shall be criminally or civilly liable. Furthermore, no physician confirming the serious health risk to the child's mother shall be criminally or civilly liable for those actions. So, you have it right there in very, very plain English. that nothing in the Alabama law criminalizes a woman for having an abortion, nor does it criminalize a physician who performs an abortion under the allowances made in the law, which is to save the life of the mother. All it does is place criminal penalties on a physician for performing an abortion outside the parameters of the law, for performing an elective abortion, one beyond the limits. That is what this does. Now, again, that's completely regardless of whether or not you agree with that. We're simply talking about what the law says. So if you're going to criticize a law, if you're going to say you have a problem with it, if you're going to say that it's unconstitutional, whatever your argument is, you have to at least know what it says. And so what I have in response to say to that is, if you have to lie about a bill in order to further your argument, you have no argument. All right, if your argument was based in science or based in fact or based in logic, you would not have to spread misinformation about it in order to make your point. You'd be able to do that by itself. Okay, so now we've got, so it's blatant misinformation about these laws. I'm going to skip over to little Miss Alyssa Milano, and I'm going to read her tweet here, which is just laughably ignorant. Alyssa Milano, again, actress, hadn't been in anything in a hot minute, says she's going to boycott the state of Georgia because of their heartbeat bill. This is what she has to say about fetal heartbeat bills, okay? I'm going to read the tweet. So Alyssa Milano, in all of her scientific knowledge, she says, "Dear press, stop calling them heartbeat bills and call them fetal pole cardiac activity bills." Fetal pole cardiac activity bills. So this is Alyssa Milano, who's got about as much scientific qualifiers to talk about fetal pole cardiac activity as Bill Nye the Science Guy does to talk about climate change. But regardless, this is what she's pushing. She says, don't call them heartbeat bills. We're going to call them fetal pole cardiac activity bills because that changes absolutely everything, right? You can say, oh, it's totally fine. My dad just had a myocardial infarction. Well, that means he had a heart attack. You can science it up all you want, but it doesn't lessen the severity of the fact that your dad just had a heart attack, right? You can call it by its scientific name all you want. That doesn't change what it is. And this is something that, again, along with pushing misinformation about bills like this is something that you're starting to see a lot more of from abortion advocates because, again, they've kind of abandoned some of their arguments. They don't make them as much, especially not on like the national platform. You might see people just kind of out and about who still make the same old tired arguments, but you really don't hear a whole lot of arguments based on ethics anymore. Arguments based on logic and reason. They can't make their arguments based on science. We know way too much about childbirth and about pregnancy and about fetal development and things we didn't know back in 1973 when Roe versus Wade was decided. We know too much, okay? It's out there too much. YouTube exists now, so you can actually look up abortion procedures. You can actually look up fetal development. You can read about it. There's all this information out there that didn't exist before or wasn't readily accessible before. And so now it's sort of made it harder to push certain arguments because they're so easy to debunk, right? So now we've kind of moved into, well, we're just going to start redefining things and we're just going to start using different terms and, we're going to call them different things or we're going to science it up or just this sort of push to redefine all of this stuff so that they can get away with not calling it exactly what it is. This is a baby. The baby has a heartbeat. An abortion violently kills the baby with the heartbeat by stopping the heartbeat. That is what this is. That is exactly what this is. That is all that this is. But again, they have to make it sound not as terrible as that. So we're just going to call it fetal pole cardiac activity because that doesn't sound so humanizing, right? People don't relate to that. We're going to vague it up, and it doesn't sound that bad if you call it fetal cardiac pole or fetal pole cardiac activity. That doesn't sound so horrible. You see the same exact thing, and this one is just insane to me. NPR is now doing the same thing, National Public Radio, and they actually came out with a guidance just a few days ago, telling their employees telling their reporters what they can and can't say and what terms they can and can't use when they write stories about abortion. So this is National Public Radio, right? Which, by the way, is funded by your tax dollars. Just to let everybody know, they get almost $500 million a year between NPR and PBS. So that's the kind of the radio and TV counterparts to this National Public Broadcasting, this National Public Radio. And they issued a guidance telling their reporters what terms they can and can't use when talking about abortion. So here's what they stated when it comes to what they are and aren't allowed to say. And this, I'm going to read this verbatim because it is so wildly outlandish and it is so absolutely crazy that you have to read it for yourself to believe that they actually said it. I'm going to read it specifically. Here's what they said. The term unborn implies there is a baby inside a pregnant woman, not a fetus. Babies are not babies until they are born. They're fetuses. Incorrectly calling a fetus a baby, or the unborn, is part of the strategy used by anti-abortion groups to shift language / legality / public opinion. Use unborn only when referring to the title of the bill, or qualify the use of unborn by saying what anti-abortion groups call the unborn victims of violence. The most neutral language to refer to the death of a fetus during a crime is fetal homicide. So this is your taxpayer-funded National Public Radio saying that babies are not babies, they're fetuses, and that the term unborn implies that there's a baby inside of a pregnant woman. Got a news flash for you, NPR. There's a baby inside of a pregnant woman. Got one right here. Kicks up a storm all the time. It is a baby inside of a pregnant woman. Now, if you want to use the Latin term fetus, frankly, that's accurate because, and I'm going to read from dictionary.com here, fetus is the Latin term for an unborn offspring of a mammal, in particular, an unborn human baby more than 8 weeks after conception. Baby. It's dictionary.com. It is simply the Latin term for a baby. The two are interchangeable. It's the same exact thing. So again, when you use the word fetus instead of baby and you tell people don't say baby, say fetus. Right? Don't imply that there's a baby here, it's just a fetus. Don't imply that there's a heartbeat here, it's fetal pole cardiac activity. It is dehumanizing what you're actually talking about. But the thing about that is when you change these words, when you try to science it up, when you say we're going to use the Latin word instead, we're going to nix words like baby or heartbeat or partial birth abortion, which is another thing that they wanted to nix. NPR said you can't use partial birth abortion anymore. You have to use intact dilation and extraction. Well, what the heck do you think an intact dilation and extraction is? It is when they poison a baby and pull it out whole out of its mother. If it comes out and it's still alive, they put a knife, essentially a scalpel, in the back of its neck and they drain out its brains. This is horrible, but you can look it up yourself. This is basic information about what this is. So you can call it whatever you want, but they want to call it an intact dilation and extraction. Don't say partial birth abortion. Don't say late term abortion. They also said it's okay. And again, I'm going to read verbatim. It is acceptable to use the phrase anti-abortion rights, but do not use the term pro-abortion rights. So it's totally fine to demonize people that are on the anti-abortion side of the fence and to use negative language about them, but don't ever say pro-abortion because that just sounds mean, and we don't want to say that because it just, it just really slams abortion rights advocates, right? You can change this all you want. You can use the term fetus all you want. You can use fetal cardiac pole activity. You can use whatever terms you want. It doesn't change what it is. All it means is that your argument, your stance on this issue is so weak so scientifically out there, it is so grotesque and so inhumane that you can't grapple with what it actually is. Because if you actually talked about it for what it is, regardless of the terms that you use, if you actually talked about it for what it is, and were unafraid of people understanding exactly what it is, it would reveal how monstrous this argument is. Okay, changing these terms does not change that. It just means that you're trying to put a spin on it so it doesn't sound as terrible as it actually is. This is what abortion advocates want. They cannot argue based on science. They cannot argue based on ethics, based on logic, based on reason, based on humanity's tragic history of dehumanizing certain people based on their skin color or their age or their location, or they cannot make any of these arguments anymore. That it's done. So what do they have to do? They have to try to change how we talk about it so it doesn't sound so horrible. But it is. It is absolutely atrocious. There's another thing, and I'm going to use this to kind of segue into my next topic here, because I see this redefining of terms. It's not so much that we're going to make a good case for something. It's not that we're going to rely on the facts and the evidence. We're going to simply change terms so that we can kind of trick people into thinking that we're not actually talking about what we're talking about. So bear with me here, because we're going to segue directly into socialism here and how they do the same exact thing when it comes to socialism. We're going to go to a Gallup poll, and I'm going to go ahead and put it up on the screen here because Gallup polls are notorious for having tons of numbers and statistics, where 4 in 10 Americans, this is the title of the Gallup poll, 4 in 10 Americans embrace some form of socialism. The premise here is that 4 out of 10 Americans now say they consider socialism a good thing for the country as a whole. So again, if you just went on the title of this, that's what you would think. Now we've got 4 out of 10 Americans embracing some form of socialism. However, this depends almost entirely on the redefining of the word socialism. So again, it doesn't make it any less scary, because people not knowing what socialism is arguably more terrible than people knowing what it is and embracing it anyway. Ignorance here is really kind of the enemy. So when you look at this Gallup poll, we're not talking about 4 in 10 Americans embracing socialism because they have a full and complete understanding of socialism, the history of it, what it has resulted in, and they still say, yes, that is the form of government for me. That's not what we're talking about here. We're actually talking about people who don't know what socialism is, and Gallup actually admits that. So I'm going to read here. Gallup says, previous Gallup research shows that Americans' definition of socialism has changed over the years, with nearly 1 in 4 now associating the concept with social equality, and 17% associating it with the more classical definition of having some degree of government control over the means of production. A majority of Democrats have said that they view socialism positively in Gallup polling since 2010, including 57% in the most recent measure in 2018. So, by Gallup's own admission, we are now seeing a redefining of socialism in the minds of Americans. Only 17% actually identify it as what it is, which is the government basically taking over the country and the economy, and everything gets run through them, right? So here, and we see this time and time again, right? We see this with recent Democrat proposals, and not just what they intend to do, but the way that they're talked about, right? The way that they're introduced. For example, we've got the Green New Deal, which is probably the epitome of socialism. If you want to look to anything that's been proposed in recent history, that is probably like the pinnacle of socialism as far as things that have been pushed in American government. You've got Elizabeth Warren, who's come out with her free college and her family leave plans. You've got Bernie Sanders, who's got wealth redistribution, and he is now wanting to completely take over the education system. He actually said over the weekend that he wants to make it illegal for charter schools to operate for profit. You've got Kamala Harris, who's come out just in the past few days with this pay equality plan and something called the Maternal Care Act, which is supposedly going to help black women who are kind of disenfranchised in the medical system. She says they're not being taken seriously, and it's creating a disparity of care. So you've got all of these Democratic presidential candidates coming out with their own versions of socialist policies. And they're doing so under the guise of social justice, which is exactly where you get this redefining. That is why so many Americans have bought into the redefinition of socialism. It's about social justice, right? It's about some people are getting stepped on by other people, so we need to make sure that those people have a leg up and a helping hand, and we're going to make sure that they can compete just like everybody else. So they redefine it as social justice, and so that's kind of the way that people start looking at it, right? It's not really socialism, it's social justice. And so when you see that now almost half of Americans say that socialism is good, a lot of that is depending on ignorance of what socialism actually is. Okay? But that doesn't change what it is any more than calling it fetal cardiac pole activity or fetal pole cardiac activity, whatever, changes the fact that it's a baby's heartbeat. Calling it social justice does not change what socialism is. It is a giant government takeover of your life and everything in it. That is how it works. You can't really have partial socialism. The whole point of socialism is that each one of these big government programs is dependent on money from all the other big government programs. It all works together. You can't really have a little bit of socialism. All right, socialism works as this total, all-encompassing, big government approach to your life and everything in it. And calling it something different does not change that. But unfortunately, we have a populace that is ignorant of socialism, ignorant of human history, and doesn't understand how this works. So it's very, very easy to redefine it in their minds and to get them to sign on because you've convinced them that it's something good, right? So the thing is, though, this hasn't quite taken total root yet, and there's hope in that. For example, the lack of understanding of what socialism is really shows when you start breaking down free market solutions versus government solutions and asking people about these specific things and whether or not they think the government is the answer or the free market is the answer. For example, and I'm going to put this up again from the Gallup report. When it comes to technological innovation, the vast majority of people, 75% to 19%, say that the free market is better at that, is better at technological innovation, which is very interesting because that is one thing that socialism would completely and totally squash. Technological innovation would go completely downhill because there's no incentive to have innovation. If you're not getting paid for it, if there's no, if you can only make a certain amount of money, if you can only get to a certain point in your career, if the government dictates your wages and everything else about your life, there's no incentive for technological innovation. So most people understand that the free market is the best way to get that done. The distribution of wealth, 68% to 28%, say that the free market is better at that. Most people understand that. And then you start seeing the gap between those that approve of the free market and those that want more government intervention start to narrow. The place where you see it start to come the closest before it completely flips is this idea of healthcare. Now I've got a theory on why this is. I think that is where you're starting to see more of a disparity or more of an equality, rather, of people that think that the free market is the solution versus those that think that the government is the solution. According to Gallup, 53% still rely on the free market, while 44% say that the government is the answer there. And I think a lot of that is because this issue has been so pounded home over the last decade or so. You see so many Democrats, so many people on the left side of the fence driving home this narrative that there is such a disparity in healthcare that the government needs to come in and fix all of it. And the more they push that, and the more the media pushes it for them, the more you're going to see people buying into this lie. They can't really push that with technological innovation because there's too much understanding that the free market is going to be the driving force behind that. And anytime the government comes in, things tend to tank. But with healthcare, they've pushed it so much that people are starting to buy into that lie. So let's talk about healthcare real quick. And let's use that kind of as a catalyst for talking about how none of this works regardless of whether you call it by another name and make it sound really nice. For example, lots of people like to push, if you bring up Venezuela, a lot of people that that are pro-socialism, particularly Democrats, particularly elected officials and politicians, they like to say, well, that's just socialism that's not done correctly. Well, no, it's actually socialism that is done perfectly. That's when you get Venezuela. But a lot of times they like to point to different nations as examples of socialism that is done correctly in their point of view, that has succeeded. So they like to point to places like Canada, they like to point to places like Sweden or the UK, or places where healthcare has been more socialized. There's several problems with that. The first problem is that a lot of the times the reason that those countries are able to socialize in certain aspects like that is because of technological innovation from capitalist countries. For example, the United States has developed the vast majority of medical technology known to the free world, okay? And we have done so via capitalism. That is how we have produced these things. Now, you can argue that there are medications that are too expensive. I'm not saying that the system is perfect. I'm not saying that there aren't always ways to tweak it and to make it better. But capitalism has been the driving factor for that innovation. Countries that socialize their healthcare can largely do so because of innovation that is produced in capitalist countries. So they're kind of bogarting a little bit if you think about it. All right. They're able to socialize because all the innovating is being done somewhere else, right? Where it is dependent upon capitalism. If we were to socialize our entire healthcare system and socialize medicine, and our innovation plummeted because we could no longer keep that up, people were not incentivized to manufacture more things or to produce more things, then it would go down across the board. You would no longer see other socialized healthcare systems being able to sustain that because they rely so much on innovation that is done through capitalism. The second problem is that it doesn't work. Even with all of that, socialized healthcare systems do not work. They don't have to be as bad as Venezuela to prove that it doesn't work. Now, Venezuela is pretty bad. When you've got people that are having to take their own scalpels into surgery, you know that you have really, really tanked. But it doesn't have to be that bad for you to understand that socialized healthcare systems do not work. For example, let's go over to the UK. All right, so you normally think, okay, the UK, that's not Venezuela, right? That's a westernized nation. They're a lot like us in a lot of ways. So what's wrong with their healthcare? Well, I'll tell you what's wrong with their healthcare. An article was actually just released over the past couple of weeks about the National Healthcare Service and about the fact that they are completely and totally tanking. They are going down the drain. They are freaking in the toilet. And a lot of that is because of socialized healthcare. Going to read here from the Daily Mail. A total of 4.23 million people in England were waiting for routine hospital treatment in March. That's a rise of 90,000 over the previous month. 90,000. There are 10% more people waiting than the same time last year. Emergency rooms in English hospitals have had to deal with a staggering 70,403 visits on an average day in April, the most ever. And for the first time since records began, more than 1 in 5 cancer patients now have to wait 2 months or longer to start treatment after a doctor's referral. 1 in 5 cancer patients are having to wait 2 months or longer to start treatment after a doctor's referral. Now, I don't know if you know anybody who's got cancer or if you've ever had cancer yourself. That is a darn long time to wait just to get a referral. That's not, or just to start treatment after a referral. 2 months or longer. You can be dead in 2 months if you have certain forms of aggressive cancer. And now 1 in 5, that's 20% of cancer patients are having to wait 2 months or longer. Let's skip on over to Ireland. Again, you think that's not Venezuela? That's a westernized nation. Over in Ireland, it turns out that the government-run university hospital, Waterford, which is run, again, by the government, now has dead bodies leaking out onto the floor because the government hasn't gotten around to fixing their facilities. This is an article that I just wrote a couple of weeks ago detailing this issue, and I'm going to read a couple of the details here, which are absolutely staggering and nauseating. So again, this is a government-run university hospital, UHW. They had a letter written by 4 pathologists who were complaining about the conditions at this hospital, which was supposed to have been fixed a long time ago, but ended up, the problem was the morgue was not being properly refrigerated. So you actually had dead bodies being stored in an unrefrigerated morgue and were starting to decompose so badly that they were leaking onto the floor. The pathologists wrote in their letter that they sent to the government, and it was an open letter, so the media got a hold of it. They said, bodies decompose in the corridors, leading to closed coffin funerals with relatives unable to view the remains as a result of gaseous decomposition. The trauma imposed on the bereaved is almost unspeakable. So again, here you've got a government-run hospital in a westernized industrial nation, and they can't even run it well enough to refrigerate their morgue to keep their bodies cool, and they've got rotten bodies leaking out all over the floor. I know that's absolutely disgusting, but that's what you have in a westernized nation thanks to government-run healthcare. The health officials at the hospital were warning of environmental and health risks posed by the decomposing bodies. They were saying that there was all kinds of air quality problems, that loved ones were coming in and having to have closed casket funerals because of the decomposition of their loved ones. According to the 4 pathologists who wrote the letter, this was actually a problem that has been in existence since 2004. So this hospital morgue was deemed unfit in 2004. The health service executive, which was established that same year in 2004 and then ended up taking over in 2005, still had not replaced it. They hadn't done anything to fix the situation. The project received money for improvement in 2013 and got the go-ahead, but the letter says that no definite commitment from the HSE to fund the completion of this project, other than that it is queued for funding without a defined time frame. So you've got a government-run facility with dead bodies in it. They have known that it was broken since 2004 and have done nothing about it. This is what happens when you put the government in charge. It has happened every single time throughout the history of mankind. When the government was put in charge of the Amtrak, everything tanked. When the government was put in charge of Social Security, everything tanked. When the government in Ireland is put in charge of these hospitals, everything tanks. When the government was put in charge of healthcare in England, now you've got 20% of cancer patients who are waiting 2 months or more for treatment. This is what the government does. You can call it socialism. You can call it social justice. You can stand there and you can listen to Democrat after Democrat after Democrat wax poetic about how all these people are being disenfranchised and it's the government's job to come in and save everybody and all of this victimization. You can listen to Bernie Sanders talk about college and Elizabeth Warren talk about family leave and Kamala Harris talking about the wage gap and how the government needs to fix it. The government screws up everything it touches. It is too big, it is too complicated, and it messes everything up. It did the same exact thing with Obamacare, and it proved it right in the onset because it couldn't even get the dadgum website up and running. All right, this is what happens every single time. And you do not have to look to Venezuela to find examples. You can look to our closest neighbors to find examples of how socialist-run healthcare, socialist-run programs in general do not help. All you have to do is look at a place like Chicago. They've been led by Democrats for 100+ years. They have socialist programs out the wazoo. They should be a socialist utopia if everything that the socialists say works there. California, same exact way. San Francisco, wonderful socialist utopia. Big government, everything. They have needles in their streets. They have a homeless problem so bad that children are actually having to dodge human feces to walk to school. Look it up. Actual stories. Things in these places would not be falling apart if socialism worked so well, if democratic policies worked so well. Show me an example where that works, where it's actually been put into practice and where it works. I challenge you to find one because over and over and over again, you consistently see how when the government is put in charge of things, it fails every single time. I have sat on the DC Metro enough to know that that is true. Catches fire constantly. All right. So this is socialism. This is socialism. It's not some pie in the sky social justice program, as much as they want to call it that. It is socialism. It is big government. It is a big government takeover of your life. It works by taking over absolutely everything and completely conquering your life. And it doesn't matter what else you call it. Rotten meat by any other name is just as disgusting and is just as likely to get you sick. That is what this is. So again, I say all that to say, it's the same exact thing that you see with the abortion debate. It's the redefining of negative terms. It's, we don't want to call this what it is. We don't want to actually expose it for what it is. So we're going to redefine it and we're going to repackage it into something that's a little more palatable and sounds a little bit better so that, you know, Gallup can come out and say, well, we've gotten 4 out of 10 people to sign on to this because they think it's such a great thing. Then you actually ask them what it is, and they can't really tell you. There's a reason for that. It is ignorance. Notice how I'm not saying that people are stupid. Stupidity is a lack of intelligence. Ignorance is a lack of information. There is an ignorance about what these things are. And that is what the left likes to prey on because they don't want to deal with arguments over the actual merit of their proposals, over what abortion actually is and results in, over what socialism actually is and what it results in. They don't want to do that, so they want to redefine it. What is the answer to that? So I'm going to kind of wrap all of this up here, and I'm not going to try to give some silver bullet, but I'm going to give you what I think my pushback is, or what it should be at least, from conservatives. So we've kind of talked, and there's two different schools of thought here. There's what the liberals do, and then there's what conservatives tend to do. Notice how I'm not saying Democrats and Republicans. I don't think that those terms are interchangeable anymore. You can be a conservative and not be a Republican. You can be a Republican and not be at all conservative. And then many of us have actually found ourselves fairly politically homeless because we are conservative, but we don't relate much to the Republican Party anymore. So I'm going to say liberal and conservative here because I think that that more accurately defines what we're talking about. There's the liberal mantra and how they tend to push their ideas. And it doesn't necessarily make a ton of logical sense, but they're very, very good at it because of one thing. They tend to convince people that they care about people. Now, their policies and everything they actually put into place and the results that they get prove the opposite. But they tend to talk about their policies in terms of you and your life and your victimization and what matters to you and your family. And they're very, very, very good at that. And I will give them props for that because they're a heck of a lot better than conservatives are, I will tell you. All right, so this is what liberals tend to do. So they're going to push things like, you know, your pay gap, you're not getting paid enough, your health care, your family. And they prey on this whole victimization thing, right? But they do so in a way that makes people feel like they care. Conservatives, on the other hand, they tend to have much more logical arguments. The math adds up, but we tend to talk about things at 37,000 feet. We don't necessarily get into the nitty-gritty of people's lives. We like to rely on our logic and our math, and all of that is fine, well, and good, because we have that, right? When you want to talk about, well, okay, how much are you bringing in revenue? How much are you spending? And does that math add up? The problem is that that doesn't necessarily translate to Joe Schmo who's trying to pay his bills. So my response is, I think conservatives, in order to kind of debunk a lot of these myths and to sort of get around this whole redefining of terms where the left wants to twist things up and make them sound like something other than they are, I think that we need to do a better job of packaging the logic and packaging the sense that our policies make, but doing so in a way that actually translates to someone and their bills and what happens around their dinner table and what affects their lives and the problems that are most dear to them. So, again, we could talk ad nauseum about all the different subjects that applies to, how to talk about college loan debt, how to talk about the gender pay gap, and kind of debunking that. And we've done some of that, and we're going to continue to do so in the future. But that is something, when you are talking to somebody who is just diehard convinced of these liberal policies, and you come at them with facts, make sure that you're doing so in a way that actually applies to their situation and actually translates to the common person's life. Because again, I think that if we just continue to quote statistics and we continue to look at things from a bird's eye view, that's where we tend to miss where people are coming from and why they're gravitating towards these liberal policies. Because again, it's not because of an understanding of what they are. It's because they are being redefined as social justice. They're being redefined as justice for me, justice for my life. And we need to make sure that they understand why that's not justice, that's not going to get them justice, and it doesn't make any sense. So that's kind of my sort of glossed over response. And some of the things that we're going to be talking about in the future is how to do this, right? How to make sure that when we're talking to people, we're doing so in a way that relates to them, that actually matters to them. Because again, I think that that's something that the left has perfected and conservatives are still trying to kind of catch up on. So all that to say, thank you so much for hanging with me today. I really appreciate it. We will be back hopefully next week. And make sure that you're downloading us on iTunes, especially if you miss an episode. Just go to iTunes, type in Brittany Unfiltered. You can get all of my stuff there. And I will hopefully see you guys back next week.